Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 571 of Constructive Criticism. I'm your host, Heezy, and I am joined by my co-host, the man himself, the coach, the one who would always seal the whole moon, Mason Clark.
Hello.
And the one, the only, that he would be your idol if he could, but instead he's sitting here and he's telling you that everything is going to be okay and that we're going to close it. Abe Stein.
I have no idea what we're referring to, which is awesome. But
Spencer's
also
on week 2 of K-pop Demon Hunters on the podcast.
Dude, we're gonna go on like week 3 until this stops. We're going.
We could not.
I'm just not.
Well,
as an act of protest, I'm just not going to watch K-pop Demon Hunters until
dude,
it ends.
You will be kicked off the podcast. You have to. It's so good.
It is good. I think you and your girlfriend would like it.
You should watch it with your girlfriend. It's so
but
good.
Here is that fall just started, and my girlfriend wants to rewatch Gilmore Girls, and I've never.
Dude,
you've never seen Gilmore Girls?
Fun fact, no,
it is.
That's not how that works. Every fall, you start Gilmore Girls. It's like Mason. Oh, buddy. Yeah. So we're already on season 2, Abe. We have done the thing you're talking about. You need to take a minute to watch K-pop Demon Hunters.
That is bona fide, guaranteed longer than a minute.
It's 90 minutes. It's actually like the shortest movie ever.
That's 90 times bigger an ask than the one you just made of me,
No,
Spencer.
it's 90 minutes. They actually made it as short as possible. I'll donate $10 to the charity of your choice to watch it.
All right, I'll let you know I watched it.
Okay.
The Mason Clark Fund.
The Mason Clark Fund is not a charity.
Art of the deal. Okay? I'm a negotiator.
Fun fact, we're not talking about Gilmore Girls, which we are in season 2 of already in my house. And we're not talking about K-pop Demon Hunters. We are talking about evaluating deck lists. Oh, Mason. This topic is exhausting. Where do you even find a deck list, man?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple places that people typically go to. I mean, I'm sure lots of you will know some of these, but maybe some of you don't. So websites like MTG Top 8, MTG Goldfish, Fire Shoes on Twitter. Those are 3 good ones. You can also just type in MTGO challenge results or MTGO50 onto Google, and then you'll find a big list of them. That's actually one of the things I have pinned on my computer and check every time it's time to go through. Is look over what are the most recent challenges and supers and 5-0s. Those are some, but also just you'll find lots on all over social media and even some on YouTube. But if you're looking for one-stop shops, those first 3 I mentioned of MTG Top 8, MTG Goldfish, and Fire Shoes on Twitter, will find 99% of what you're looking for.
Can I throw myself under the bus? Is that allowed on a podcast? But I don't look at 5-0 deck lists.
Oh man, dude, you gotta. That's
why not? Dude, I do not. I knew that you guys were going to do this, but I don't look at them. I think that they give me hopium.
You're not the same guy complaining that Magic players give up too easily on formats and not looking for the spice.
Dude, hold on. Mason. I think they give me hopium.
Yeah, that's a good thing. They should they should ignite a spark, see what's good about them. And after today's episode, you'll be armed with the tools you need to know if this is something you should jump into or not.
What am I supposed to say after what you just said? I don't look at them. I think this is a weakness of mine, and I wanted to call it out.
Do you look at challenge results?
Yeah.
Sometimes challenges will just 5-0s, you know?
Well,
True.
I've had the reason I bring this up is actually a coaching client
Mm-hmm.
for a recent RC that
Mhm.
they crushed the day two event, and they were like, "Hey, how do I look at modern results?" And I was like, "Hey, you should look at challenge results." They're like, "Is a 5-0 better than a better than a challenge top 8?" And I was like, "No, it's not. Like, you should look at it this way." And something that was funny is that I realized that I don't actually look at 5-0s. Like, I don't.
I mean, the player Teamer for Life. I just pulled one up and scrolled to the find the
Dude,
first spicy thing.
stop.
They
I
have Spell Queller in their energy deck.
Oh my god, Heath is a legend. No, like
can
Team for Life
I
was
can I
was on
say
my
what
team
I'm
for the
saying
last Pro
without you guys
Tour.
trying to like?
Oh my god, killer.
Yeah.
I feel like you guys are attacking me, knowing who I
No, Spencer,
am.
I'm not attacking you. I really think that I mean I appreciate you saying because I think it's important to talk about like if we're talking about deck selection and evaluating deck lists, like what are you looking for and what are you spending your time looking for when you're looking at a deck list, right? What your goals are when looking at a deck list mean that you should look in different places for information. Like for me, when I'm reading deck lists, it entirely depends. For example, for the RCQ I played last weekend, where I was pulling a deck list to play for a tournament the next week, I only really looked at the challenge results myself
Yeah.
because I was just looking for a 75 that I could borrow from someone because I didn't have a deck together. They said, "Oh yeah, like what 75 Demir do you want to play? I have most everything." And so I looked and I found one that kind of met my parameters. But if I was really working on the deck week to week, I mean that's where I start to look at the 5-0s from really trying to
Yeah.
understand like how people are trying to push the envelope and to try new ideas and break it. Like I'm looking at the sideboards and like the flex spots and stuff like that because that's where the stakes are. I wouldn't say really it is. The stakes are low enough that it's worth playing a deck that you think is good, but it's like a good balance of a good enough competition to really stress test an idea, but not such high stakes that you don't feel like, oh well, I should really uh I'm putting 300 play points behind my entry here in several hours of my day to play this event. Like I don't want to just play an untested idea just for fun. But a league, you have a little bit more opportunity, kind of like laddering on Arena. If you ever like watch a streamer just kind of throw cards in a deck while they're doing that, like it's the same kind of idea, and maybe you get to see those cards get played and see how they perform. But I think even just looking at the cards that players who are ready to really register those are thinking about is really really valuable. Like it's it was a huge level up for me when I was grinding SCGs to go from being someone who didn't really know how to do that to kind of reading the tea leaves of all the deck lists and appreciating them as they were built and the ideas at play there.
Yeah, not to put the carriage in front of the horse here, but like a lot of what I want from like looking at deck lists is to learn different things and see what's going on and see what people are thinking about and doing. And so the reason I mentioned 5-0s is like kind of what Abe said there, Spencer, of like it lets me see things that like I would probably never think to do or dismiss. And then I can kind of put it on the back burner. And one result's not going to get me like, I'm not running out here putting Spell Queller in my, energy deck. But it is like a very interesting to think about, like, oh yeah, energy is really good when it's ahead and probably could afford to hold up Spell Queller in a format that's very combo based. That's interesting, and
Yeah.
like that's something that I think about. And then, I just have to kind of figure out when I would use that information versus when I wouldn't. I would guess that in theory in modern you should never do it, but it's an idea that I promise you I would not have had for a year straight if you told me to like iterate on an energy deck every day. I don't think I ever land on Spell Queller, but Teamer for Life did 5-0'd, and now that's an interesting thing to think about in the future too, of like maybe not even Spell Queller, but maybe some universes beyond Spider-Man swings in for 1 in a blue or whatever, or some red, or maybe red blue or
Swings
something,
in, baby.
and now I do it.
No, I throw myself under the bus on purpose, right? Like it's so we can have this conversation. But this is the thing that I could do better. I could honestly be a better Magic player if I did this. So,
And I think everyone could too. I think I don't look at these nearly enough. I really should look at these like every couple days and not every week or so.
dude, hold on. Are we looking at them at the same time? Because like, I'm also looking at the 5-0s like, I don't know, every week, but I'm only looking at the ones I care about. Right? Like, it's like,
I don't have that luxury. I gotta look at all of them for coaching.
Mason just cares about all Magic decks.
Well, yeah, I have to look at all the, like, whatever the RCQ and RC format is, I need to pay attention to. And then if there's commentary for something coming up, I need to start getting ahead of that. Like,
I don't let my coaching students be that defined.
You don't keep up with the RCQ and RC format?
No, I don't. I don't. If they're like, I'm a X player, I'm like, okay, well, then I don't want to coach you.
Right, I was talking about the RC and RCQ format.
I was saying what Abe said.
Oh, okay. I did not hear Abe speak. That's my mistake. Okay, this all makes a lot more sense now. I'm really confused how we got here.
No, I'm saying, like, I don't let. If you want to be a coaching student of Spencer, I'm like, okay, let's learn a deck or decks or a format. And the thing that was funny about what just happened was what you just said. What are we doing? I don't know. Let's go on to the next topic. Mason, when you look at a game plan of a deck, how do you look at it right now? Like, I want to talk about standard for what it's worth. You look at like mono red, blue white, and is it like, what are you looking at?
I mean, I'm looking at, what are the goals of your deck, right? Like, sometimes I think of it as like, if this was a sales pitch for your deck, what is your deck selling point, right? So a good example of this might be in blue white. Your sales pitch is like, hey, I've got a lot of really powerful catch-all answers. I dodge a lot of interaction that people are playing, and I have some really strong finishers that, some of them even double as my card selection if you go like the Meringue River region route. And with those sort of things, I can kind of get an idea of like, okay, this is what this deck's trying to do, right? So is it Cauldron as an example? It is, an aggressive deck that has this curve out game plan that also has these combo-y kills that sort of take over the game out of nowhere. Okay, so that's sort of what this deck is doing. And when I look at decks, one of the first things I'm looking for is trying to understand what it's doing, because if I don't understand what the deck's doing, I can't really think about its choices, right? You might play a card that looks really bad to me, but maybe that's because I'm not thinking about what your deck's trying to do, right? And sometimes, I can't fully evaluate something like that correctly if I don't understand, oh, this is a mid-rangey control deck instead of a pure control deck, as an example.
Abe, I think you're really good at identifying like turn-based interactions. I'm kind of curious, like, do you see the same thing as Mason in this standard format?
I mean, in the standard format, it's hard to say because of Cauldron being what it is. I think that the format is really kind of defined by, at least in the present moment, is kind of defined by the most important things, and then a lot of what I wind up looking for, right? I think because there's not a lot of, not a lot of new ideas. Now there are new takes and ideas. I think the mono red deck from over the weekend is a good example of that. But there's not a lot of new ideas necessarily taking place in deck building a lot of the time. The innovations are pretty slow, in the best deck, because there's not a lot of pressure to compete to beat it outside of other decks. That's really compelling. There are just a lot of statements that you'll see in people's deck lists about how they think the deck functions or what's important. And that even is true outside of Cauldron. I mean, I think looking at like Dimir Midrange, you can see people who clearly have built their deck, to try to have different answers to different things, or configure their 2-drop slot differently than other builds, because they're, with those differences and choices, you're saying these are the actual interactions that I care about winning on, right? If you're playing Azure Beastbinder instead of playing like Deep Combat in your Dimir deck, that's a pretty strong statement of how much removal you think is being played in the format that can kill a bat, and also, how much it matters to interrupt what's happening on the board compared to what's happening in people's hands, right? Like those are two very different approaches. But a player or a deck list that is kind of leaning into that has a different game plan than one that doesn't. I think that just learning to kind of understand and read into what all of those little decisions add up to be, at least in this current standard format, that's a lot of where there's room to see differences in what you're looking at, or like what players might think are like the best game plan to beat a mirror match or to beat the other decks they're actually worried about. I mean, you can even look at the VV Cauldron decks and say, some of them playing more counter magic or more playing things like artist talent, right? They might have a different perspective on what is actually important in those games they're playing compared to people who are playing other lists. And that, I think, is like the most valuable thing about like looking at deck lists and looking at a game plan, like the most key part.
I think that you just said what I was gonna say, of like, I really like the bat versus what is it called? Beast Caller?
Azure Beastbinder.
Beastbinder? I hate Beastbinder. For example, like I'm just gonna use this. Like, you can throw me under the bus. YouTube comments. I think you should not buy this card. I think it's bad. I think that it's like a 1/3 that does not help your game plan. But I think that if you believe that the thing that this thing is doing is about what the game is doing, then maybe you should. I don't believe that, but I think that what Abe is saying is like really important, right? You're talking about 2 cards filling the same slot, doing the same thing. And when you're looking at a deck list, you have to understand, like, what is the game plan? What is the curve? What is the mana requirements? And I think that what Abe just said covers all of that. It is a deep understanding of like, hey, like, yeah, maybe all of my 1-drops are removal spells or discard spells or whatever. Maybe all of my 2-drops are interactive spells, blah, blah, blah. But if you know that going in, and Mason, correct me if I'm wrong, haven't we said like for 10 years, a plan is better than no plan?
You said correct you if you're wrong. You're not wrong.
Oh, well, you're right. I should have just told you to tell me I'm right. Like, I just think that like having a plan is better than nothing. And we're in an interesting place in standard, but like that's not magic right now. Like, the next 2 RCs are modern. The next Pro Tour is modern. When you look at something like this, do you think about mana or mana requirements when you're looking at a deck list, Abe?
I think it depends on the kind of thing I'm looking at. Like, oftentimes, and really, I think that right there's such a broad range of things you can talk about when it comes to like evaluating deck lists. Because evaluating deck lists in the context of what? If I'm looking to kind of revitalize a brew or try to like really innovate an idea, maybe I am looking at and I think recently the work that I did on Boros Hammer um, is an example, right? Like I saw that there were hammer lists playing Core Steel Cutter that had some success in some smaller challenges, and I was like, oh, this looks really interesting. Let me play around with that a bit. And so, I kind of looked at the first thing I did was I looked at the spells they were playing, and then also I looked at the mana base. And the mana base in that instance, like for me, didn't make sense. Like, okay, there's room for improvement here, but that's because I was looking at it in the context of, I want to take this and make something new out of it. If I'm looking at it just as like a resource or reference, unless the mana doesn't look like it works, like it just doesn't seem to make sense, I often don't wind up looking at it. But I do really try to look at the curve of the deck and understanding, what is it trying to accomplish, right? What stage of the game is it going to be best in, and what do the hands that I'm trying to keep look like, right? Maybe even using like sample hands as a way to kind of get a feel for that if I'm not understanding a deck I'm looking at, and then looking at what are the things the deck is accomplishing and does that work. But typically, what I try to get out of reading deck lists personally, and Mason, you might have a different perspective, and same with you, Spencer, you might have a different perspective, is just like from a high level, do the cards work together if played together? Like what is the idea there?
I'm gonna just give Mason some credit here. I actually had a moment like a couple weeks ago where I was building a modern deck list, and I was like, what would Mason say about like ephemerate? Like, does ephemerate like do what Mason would want it to do? Was a question I asked myself. Like a legitimate it, whether solitude's obvious, right? But like, did it actually serve a purpose in the deck? And I don't know, Mason. Like, you think about game plan, curve, stuff like that. What do you think?
I mean, I mentioned it kind of at the top when we were talking about 5.0s, but a lot of what I'm looking at for deck lists is like an idea of like, what are people thinking about, right? What is like another way to maybe think about this is like, what is everyone else bringing to battle with, right? Like, what is going on? What are some ideas? Is there something that I think looks close and maybe needs a little bit of work? Is there something that seems to be really doing really well that I need to keep an eye on? Is there something that looks dominant that I need to like be playing? What are the answers that other people are doing, right? Oh, everyone has, Fade from History in their sideboard, or like Force of Vigor. Okay, well then maybe these kind of strategies look a lot worse, or maybe those strategies look really weak to those kind of cards. Is there a deck that I could play that plays well with those? That's a lot of what I'm looking for. In like the nitty, like gritty, like details would be stuff like the cohesion of like the deck's game plan. So like Ephemerate might be a good example, like you're talking about, of like, okay, this deck is trying to, be a like lockout prison deck. Does it actually need this card, or does the player want this card, right? Is this a needed tool or a wanted tool? A great example of this is like Teferi Time Reveler is something that you don't need to lock out people in Modern with Eternal Witness, Ephemerate, and Orim's Champ, but you can have. So that's like a flex slot. Do we need 4 of this card? Does it make sense with everything else going on? That kind of thing of thinking out what's happening here. And then also, is my deck, or is this deck that is supposed to be covering a lot of problems doing a good job of covering those problems, right? I think of mid-range decks, I think of control decks, but it's a situation of like, okay, this deck is trying to tackle problems. How many problems does it actually tackle? And is it tackling them in a better way than maybe a deck that is perceived to be better or is more heavily played, right? You never want to be the worst version of another deck, which is something I'm always trying to think about, which is why identifying the game plan, I think, is so important at the start of all this, because to understand where that's coming from, you can then understand what kind of category you're in, right? Energy, at least in my mind, is an aggressive Jund deck, right? It is trying to curve out on you and interact. well, if I'm playing another deck like that, it needs to be doing something different or better than energy in some category for me to really pull the trigger. I don't want to play, clunky energy, right? Like all 2 and 3 drops. Now, Zoo kind of fits that bill at the surface level, but in reality does a lot of things very different than energy and has a lot of real strengths to it, right? So understanding like, okay, these decks are in similar places, on some parts of the game plan, but these differences, these strengths are what I need to identify. And then from there, I identify when I want to play those decks accordingly.
I think that what you're saying applies to kind of my next idea of this topic of like understanding how to evaluate deck lists. And I'm going to bring up one that I think that all of us would be like, what happened? Do you guys know how many cards Willie Ado played this weekend? In 9th place at the...
If they weren't BB Cauldron, I wasn't looking.
So Willie got 9th place, lost on tiebreakers for top 8, with 61 cards in his mono red deck. One of the things that was interesting to me is like he went undefeated against blue white, a matchup that you should probably not be that good against if they have their deck built correctly. And I'm kind of curious, like, what do sideboards and potential plans mean to you when you're looking at deck lists? Whether it's a 61 card deck. Listen, Willie Ado's a Hall of Famer. One of the best mid-range players of all time. Maybe that's where red is at. I don't know. But like,
I would argue, by the way, that the 61 cards is proof that good, tight, fundamental play and understanding your roles matter way more than any like 1 or 2 of slot in your deck. The 1 or 2 of slots definitely matter, but playing good Magic matters.
I agree.
More than 61 cards.
I agree.
If you're looking at the Willie Adel, that is the takeaway I have from it.
The first thing I did was like, listen, I'm not as good as Willie Adel, but I still have to get a card. Like, there's not like a difference.
I play 61 a lot. Y'all just don't know.
I believe that. I believe that fully.
Yeah, I don't know what to cut. I want to play all these cards. I want to try them.
Abe.
What? I mean, just if you're in the Hall of Fame, you can play as many cards as you want.
That's not the point. I'm trying to say, like, what was funny about the deck list to me, and I'll just say this, is like, I played the deck for, I think, like, 7 games today. 7 matches, sorry. It was really clear, like, he had a sideboard plan. And it really spoke to me about like plan versus nothing. Like, oh yeah, we just clearly these cards are better than these cards in this matchup was like a thing that was spoken to me. Trying out Willie's deck. And I think that like challenging yourself to understand like what that would look like is really important when you're looking at and challenging a deck list, right? Like, you look at a Titan deck in Modern, you look at a Zoo deck in Modern, you look at a Boros deck in Modern. What do you know what the ins and outs look like based upon stuff? And what I learned today playing Willie's deck is like, oh, I could probably figure this out. Like, I could probably see, obviously, what was happening.
I think that's just a mark of a good deck list, honestly. That's something that I look for in...
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Any deck I'm just saying, I mean, it's true. Any deck that I'm copying, especially, like, I mean, I can talk about the Dimir mid-range deck that I played in the RCQ that I lost the finals of over the weekend. Like, I read it, and I was like, oh, yeah, like, I kind of looked at some matchups, and I, like, just kind of look back and forth. It's like, okay, yeah, I can see how this maps. And really, like, I find it really inspirational. Like, anytime I'm building a deck and I'm finishing a 75. And I think it's a good way to kind of check yourself on this skill too. We talk a lot about kind of knowing where you're at and understanding, where you can have opportunity to get better. If you're someone who, when they're building their deck for a tournament, you like look at your deck list and it's not immediately obvious to you how you would sideboard in all the important matchups, you probably need to put it back in the oven for a bit. I think that when you're looking at it, or even if you haven't done that, maybe you do. It does make sense to you if you haven't really written that out and you haven't thought about that every time you're looking at a deck list. Maybe even just a deck that won the challenge over the weekend, right? Maybe you're looking at maybe you're a mono red player, maybe you're a Boros energy player in modern, whatever. You're looking at the most recent high placing finish of your deck, and you're looking for inspiration. A good exercise to do is to just look at it and say, how would I sideboard with this deck? Ins and outs, and then kind of comparing notes the same way that we encourage you to maybe reach out to the player if it's a content creator, or ask your friends how they would sideboard with the deck. But really having a good idea of that is like so important to evaluating kind of the quality of deck list you're looking at. And often when you look at maybe there's players who you recognize their username on Magic Online, or know that they're a content creator or a pro that whose opinion you trust and you really respect. Maybe you want to go and look at that and say, okay, how does this map, and can I figure that out? Because you'll find that some players you kind of agree with on the way things work more than others, and it's a really important starting point to say, okay, what is this card for? And maybe if you can't figure it out and you're looking at a card in the sideboard that doesn't come in anywhere, you should start asking yourself, why is this card here? What would I use it for, if anything? And what's the plan, right? There's a real, I think, learning curve that's hard to fit into just one episode of the show, about like what the key things you're looking for are. But I would say that really just asking yourself the question anytime you're looking at a deck list of why is this card here? What is this card accomplishing? What matchup is this card for? Or, what problem does this card solve? And then, when I'm playing against this matchup, what does my sideboard plan look like? And then doing the same thing, right, with decks that you're less familiar with and your opponent's decks, right? What does their sideboard plan look like against my deck? Are all really good questions to keep in the back of your mind while you're reading deck lists and while you're kind of evaluating them. But, I think that in general, my approach is always to just aggregate what I'm seeing, right? Looking at what I think is working or what seems to be, kind of the consensus and the hive mind of people playing one deck. What are they getting towards? And then also, what are the things outside of there that haven't seen the light of day yet, right? Haven't caught on yet, or maybe don't have, haven't worked out, but keeping those in mind as I'm working on my decks.
I think we want to go back to some just stuff that we didn't cover, because I think we're about to wrap this up. But stock cards versus flex slots. I think Abe, you kind of covered this a little bit during your plan part. Understanding like, okay, what does like a typical deck list look like, and are there cards that are different, and how many cards are different? Why are they different? What are the cards that are different? And looking at things like that. We already talked about sideboard's potential plans with Mason. Mason, you talked about like what do the cards look like when I'm looking to win? Like what is the cohesive plan that's happening? And I think that like the thing that we missed that I just want to highlight before we kind of wrap up is mana. One of the things that I think that people miss a lot, and that they discount decks a lot that do well, it's like, hey, I like this deck did well, but I played this deck and it did awful. And a lot of the reason was the mana was bad, or I drew the wrong lands, or whatever. And I think that like understanding like, okay, does the deck have the right mana? Can it have the right mana? And what could that look like? was the other thing that I wanted to touch on. Mason, anything else you wanted to touch on?
I think it's super important, but I would also say that's one of those things that, in my mind, I think about a lot when it comes to like before even looking at deck lists is like understanding a format and like what mana is playable. And we used a lot of modern examples today, and obviously in modern you can do whatever you want, right? So like we're not going to hit it there, but it is important for like standard, if Pioneer ever comes back, like understanding like what you're actually allowed to do with the dual lands, because I just would disregard whole archetypes if their mana base isn't like cohesive. Like it's like, oh, you don't have functional mana like as a 5-color deck. You would need to be doing something unbelievably strong, unbelievably consistently, and like proven to me over and over again before I would like take a look, for example, at a 5-color standard deck right now. That's like truly 5 colors, not like is it splashing a couple cards, like you have to look at those sort of things. It is giga important, but I think that's something too to also pay attention to and do a little pre-research, right? Especially in formats like standard, like okay, what is legal? What do I have access to? And then when you're looking through deck lists, that can sometimes help because one thing we didn't mention is there is a ton of information to parse when you're doing all this, and it is okay for you to like. It is better to look at 20 deck lists instead of the full 100, let's say, right? Like every little bit matters a lot. Don't feel like, oh, I can't dedicate a couple hours or however long you think it might take you to do it. Just like knock through a couple, come back later. Maybe you don't even have time to come back later. It's fine.
It's almost like compartmentalize, right? Like it's like if you're going to do modern, do whatever you're going to do in modern. If you're going to do standard, do whatever you're going to do. You know what I mean? It's like, and then if you're going to look up, I'll just give an example. Like if you're going to look up landfall in standard, you're like, hey, I really don't want to play whatever mono red, or is it? And I think that landfall is like a great third choice. Whatever. How can I look at these decks? Like compartmentalize that part. Right? What are those decks doing that are good? What are those things doing? And I'm not saying that like picking landfall is suddenly going to do you the best, but at least you will have the best version and the best understanding from that type of experience. So, Abe, anything you want to say before we move on?
I love reading deck lists. They're all like poetry. Everyone should do it.
I actually thought you were going to say the word poetry, so that's really funny. If you want to check out our sponsor, check out our sponsor at unhep.gg. Link in the show notes, or Mana Traders, just code CCMG6. Also, link in the show notes. There are no Patreon shoutouts this week, and there are also no Patreon questions this week, even though I asked. Mason devoured the Patreon questions in the Patreon.
Oh my god, I went back from 2023.
Dude, you crushed it. I could have grabbed one, but I was like, Mason's already done all these, so I have one. And this is to my co-hosts. And I said, hey, how do you decide if it's okay to be X player? Recently I was called Teamer Guy. Mason, hold your thoughts, because you've called me something else. And and that I added green for no reason to prowess. Funny enough, I tweeted that I would play UR prowess the week before. My question is it okay to be that guy?
I mean, I don't know how you feel about this. I think it all depends on what your goals are and everything. I think one of the worst things that happens to competitive Magic players is they start thinking of themselves as X person or X type of player. I am a control player. I only play control, Mason. Like that sort of thing is pretty like bad, assuming your goal once again is to make the Pro Tour and consistently do well. I think that like you can succeed, it's just not the easiest path possible. And so like, is it like cool to be like, I love X style of deck and I want to play all the time? Totally. That's a totally great place to be. I'm jealous of a lot of people who just like play X deck all the time or whatever and enjoy themselves and get to, always like find these little small things, and it's a totally fine thing. And it doesn't mean you can't do these sort of things. So it really just kind of matters of what your goals are, right? You know, is your goal for like this week to do well at your local RCQ? Sure. Be teamer guy. Do you want to be teamer guy this season? Be teamer guy this season. Should your entire personality be teamer and only play teamer and always default to those things? No. You're limiting yourself. You know, you can do more. Just I find this happens a lot, you know, when someone gets early success with something, right? Someone qualifies for their first PT playing X deck, they turn into X guy, you know?
I thought it was really funny. Before Abe goes, like, my teammate played the teamer list, the teamer prowess list that, you know, I had helped come up with at the team event that we took fifth at. And in one of the matches, they're like, is this Spencer's list? They like pointed at me and they're like, he won an RCQ with teamer with Bushwhack. Is this Spencer's deck? And my team was like, no, it's like actually a lot of people came together with this. It wasn't my idea. And what was funny about it, it was like, okay, like, am I teamer guy? Like, I might be Bushwhack guy. That might be who I am right now. I believe in Bushwhack. But also, I said that I would play Prowess blue-red before that. Like, I don't... I like being the guy that's, like, gonna test the boundaries of X. Whether it's Snake, whether it's Prowess, whether it's Ramp, whatever. Like, I'm happy to push green decks in the way that green decks need to be pushed. Is green good right now? No, it's not. Green's bad. Like, but I don't think that it's bad to be the guy that's gonna push something.
I'm glad that's how you feel about it. Personally, and this is my answer, it is never okay for me to be X player. Never do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of my creed.
I just had
Never
water come out my nose. You are X player though. You are hammer player. Everyone
I'm hammer player, and yet I would not recommend playing hammer to my friend playing the
all I said is that I would play Prowess with Bushwhack and freaking Questing Druid.
That wasn't your question. The question this is a good listening moment here.
Yes, let's go.
The question that was presented to us by our lovely listener Spencer here,
yes,
was how do you decide if it's okay to be X player? And then you tell us an antidote. So your question is it okay to be X player? And I think Abe and I
agree with you guys.
Yeah, I assume Abe means if your goal is to qualify for the Pro Tour and compete. Obviously, if you're playing,
this is I said.
Oh, that's just all together. Okay, well, Abe's a little extreme by my.
If you're referring to Abe's dime, I'm not. No, it's not okay.
I also don't think I'm teamer guy for what it's worth. I never thought that I was Snake guy.
You call yourself teamer guy on the podcast.
I mean, I do jokingly because of you.
It's crazy how one time you'll make a throwaway joke 8 years ago and it will have ramifications for the rest of your life.
It's gonna last for our entire friendship, Mason.
No, I wanted to point something out though. Like Abe being someone who likes Hammer and didn't play Hammer for like 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. He didn't do it for 2 years, and so then when
scammer.
Yeah, he scammed. He played other decks or whatever. You know, he did whatever he thought was best. And so then when Corey Stillcutter Hammer came around, I was talking to, I want to say it was a coaching client, and they were like, oh, did you see like this bad version of Hammer? And I was like, I haven't put too much thought into it, but I can tell you this. My friend Abe, who played a lot of Hammer in the past when it was really, really good, this is the first time he said he thinks Hammer might actually be playable again.
Yeah.
And to me, that's really, really important. And like that sort of honesty of like, hey, I like playing these cards, but I know I can't play these right now. And I'm, you know, I would love the opportunity to, but I got to have a reason to. And when Abe like sort of put his weight behind like, hey, man, I 5-0'd with this. Here's some of what I'm thinking about with it, blah, blah, blah. You know, like, what do you think? To me, that was like, okay, I should take notice of this, because he is someone who enjoys the hammer play style, especially when it was really good, but he didn't just back it all the time. Abe's not out here like, okay, Mason, so like, yeah, we're going to get the new bagel card from Spider-Man and the new photo card from Spider-Man. We're going to put them in our deck and we're going to search it up and it's going to copy our Stoneforge triggers. No, Abe's like, I'm going to play it when it makes a lot of sense. And that's really helpful for me because it's like, okay, someone who's played this deck, this archetype a lot, is finally being like, okay, there's something good enough. Like, there are things going on here that are worth revisiting now. You know, the meta's changed. It's got new cards, et cetera, et cetera.
And I hope that that's how people feel about me with, like, Teamer Scapeshift in Modern. That they're like, hey, Spencer, Teamer Scapeshift did something in Modern. Dude, I have bad news too, Abe. Where, like,
they don't print Corey steel cutters that make.
Yeah, I don't know how to tell. I don't know how to tell the listeners this, but I guess you can tell them. But like, we had like a whole discussion in our Patreon Discord. They're like, why are you tagging Spencer in this? Because I love the deck. Like, I love the thing. But, like, nobody's out here pretending that Team or Scapeshift is suddenly going to take over Modern. Like, we're not about that. And, like, if I can be Team or Guy to, like, bounce ideas off of, I guess I'd rather be that right now than not having you ask me questions. But I guess I was really insulted by people just assuming that I added Bushwhack to a deck for no reason.
Did they say it was no reason?
Yeah.
Okay. In the story you mentioned that you mentioned like winning and adding Bushy. Mr. Wacky.
That's okay. You know, Andy's listening. He knows it's him.
Okay.
For what it's worth, I agree with these two. Don't be that guy. Just like.
Unless you want to be that guy.
Well,
if you want to be the Teamer guy, be the Teamer guy.
Yeah, it all comes down. I say this all the time in coaching. There are no wrong goals. Only when we lie to ourselves about what we set our goals to is when we mess up. If your goal is, I want to be the best Teamer player I can be in every format, and I have coaching clients like that, then it's like, great. That's an awesome goal for Magic. I am happy you figured that out. But most people aren't that way.
I think,
right? Most people are like, I want to make the Pro Tour.
I think Teamer prowess is better than Is It prowess in Standard. I legitimately believe that. And when I posted the deck list, it was funny. It was like, the hate was like, did you try Starting Town? Everybody has Starting Town. I was like, yeah, I had 2 Starting Towns to start the deck list. You don't need it. You have Bushwhack. I don't know. Always improving is the point of the podcast, though. You know, whether you're playing Starting Town or not, you always have to be improving. And that's the goal. Like, we're trying to get better. Abe, what have you done this week to get better at Magic or life in general?
Yeah, my always improving this week actually came from an RCQ that I played over the weekend. I mentioned playing Dimir and kind of just copy pasting a deck. And it's something I hadn't done in a while, of just kind of being like, oh, I'm last minute flying an event with a deck secured, but I really want to make sure that I'm going to this event, I'm spending my Sunday on it, I really want to do well. And so I went and used a resource that I gotta forget the name of the account now, but Fire Shoes had retweeted it. It's an account where they aggregate all of the free like deck guides and sideboard guides. I don't know, Mason, if you remember the name of the account. I'm literally scrolling for it and stalling for time right now. I'm so good at this.
I love it. I love the. This is one that we should do like a whole podcast on, for what it's worth, of like resources that we use. But
yeah, and I don't normally use this, and I also, I mean, for me, I had not played. It's called Skill Issue Magic. I follow them on Blue Sky. They have a Google Doc, like a spreadsheet of just every written primer guide and sideboard guide that the person comes across all formats. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna play Dimir. I haven't played Dimir since actually the last time it was at the same exact store,
Sure.
like maybe like 6 months ago, playing a different version of Dimir deck. Like that I had played Dimir at all. Let me go and read what people are talking about and just a general baseline for like what sideboard decisions are, and also what the other decks are doing against me. Like, what's my Cauldron matchup look like? What are the Cauldron players trying to do against me? And I spent like maybe 35 or 40 minutes just in bed the morning of the tournament on my phone, just taking the time to read that content and saying like, this time I could like watch an episode of like a TV show or like scroll social media, but no, I'm gonna just take the time to educate myself on the specifics of this deck for this tournament, and what's going on right now in the minds of players, rather than maybe watching another match of coverage. Let me just read. And it served me really well, because not only did it affirm a lot of what I believed about the deck and the 75 I'd chosen and my plans, but also it just provided me good insight and context on the format that was very helpful for me throughout the day. And I don't know, it's something I did a lot more and I had a lot more late in time for, maybe 6 years ago. But now I have, like, it was good to get back in the practice of doing it, because it really did make a difference.
I love that. Mason, what about you?
Mine comes from the RCQ and sort of making a mistake that I knew when I was doing it too, but I was like in a bit of a hurry. So basically, I played this RCQ, and I played blue white because of sort of the stuff I had, and I needed a certain sideboard card, and someone was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be there and I'll hand it off to you," or whatever. And the message been like, "Hey, sorry, something came up, I can't make it." I'm like, "Chill, no worries." So I'm literally missing one card. Is all I'm missing. But I also live 2 hours, basically 2 hours from the RCQ. It's like an hour 45. And so I get up, get a shower, whatever, and see the message after that. And I'm like, "Oh, I gotta get out the door and get going." And so in the moment, I kind of thought, well, what's a 15th card I can grab? And so I just grab a third of null for my blue white control deck, because I'm like, it's great against VV Cauldron. It's got some other good spots. How bad? It's 1 mana. How bad can it be? And I'm like, get it. I'm hopping in the car, and like as I'm like driving and getting on the interstate, I'm like, I shouldn't have got another card for that. I figured out all my sideboard plans. I'm not gonna have room for that card. I know I'm gonna sit down later. I'm gonna play against VV Cauldron, and I'm gonna be like, I don't have a card to change. I put all this work into these plans, and I should have instead grabbed a card from my deck. I should have grabbed a card that just covers some random problem that I was not expecting to play against, and just had it and been like, probably not the best example. Let's say Devout Decree or whatever, just been like, oh, I got a card that covers a problem. Great. If I run into that, I run into that. The 15th card, not the end of the world or whatever. And so luckily I didn't end up playing against VV Cauldron. I ended up losing in the finals of that RCQ. But that's something where I could very easily imagine myself, like, getting burned because I didn't do this correctly. I sort of went about things and kind of knew the shortcut. I knew the heuristic that's like, okay, I should get something that covers a problem I don't really have a plan for in the situation. But in the moment, I just sort of like went to what's the most mana efficient? What's the deck I'm, the most worried about playing? Perfect. Here we go, and moved on. And so a good story just to sort of be like, think through your sideboard plans, have things lined up you well, and don't just add things for the sake of adding them to help a matchup. Make sure your deck actually functions.
You were playing blue white?
Yeah.
Okay. It's funny because like you could like in other decks you could have like an Abrade and it would like do the same thing but like would have more versatility. But blue white maybe has a little bit less of that. So
yeah, I wish I just played, a Pinnacle Stargate or something in my sideboard, or
okay, all right,
anything that like just covered stuff I wasn't really prepared for.
Yeah, so for me this week was a lot about actual like dedicated understanding of modern. And I did the craziest thing I've ever done, which is playing a deck that I did not have any faith in. And that is Serum Powder Zoo. and I knew immediately that it was the worst deck I've ever played. But I played the whole league. Abe is smiling. As you can imagine, Abe, I had Cosmogoyphs and Ketramos in this deck, and if I drew a Serum Powder, my deck was so good. It was crazy. If I did not, my deck had a lot of dead cards.
Well, if you drew Serum Powder in your opener before
thank you. Yes. Yes. And you know, I won't pretend like I didn't do a lot of stuff outside of this. Like I did a lot of other Zeus stuff. I did a lot of other Titan stuff. Like I'm trying to make sure that I'm well-rounded in Modern. But what I don't want to do is just discount stuff off of my initial impressions. So when a friend of mine was like, "Hey, I just watched somebody stream this deck. It looked really good." I was like, "Okay, well, I'll do it." Yeah, worst deck I maybe have ever played in my life. Just like 12 dead cards most of the time in my deck list. And you know, I'm a believer that you like try to be positive. Like you try to always look on the positive side of like what's the best case scenario? Like what are we trying to achieve with these things? And this was a deck that did not achieve that. Like the best case scenario was first of all, we're playing a zoo deck, so like if I Serum Powder some stuff away, I might not even have the lands I need to cast my spells. Like it might actually not work. There were like a lot of problems with the deck, and what I'm really proud of is I noticed it immediately. My first Serum Powder was like, okay, I have a 7/6, but also 3 of my important lands are actually not in my deck. So fetch lands kind of suck now. And also, if I draw a Serum Powder, that card doesn't matter. And like, there were a lot of problems. And I think that like, you know, best case scenario and positive gaming is important, but you also have to be realistic. And that was one of the things that I realized playing this league.
Did you try building a deck with the good parts of it with better mana? And by better mana, I mean like just like one or two colors.
Just play 3 colors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I saw. The first thing I saw of that deck is just like that doesn't work because you
have to play 3 colors. I think
I would just play like a 2-color deck or a 3-color deck.
Yeah, I think that is probably true. I have not tried it yet, but I agree with Mason. Like you just have to figure out what the honestly it's probably the Ketramos version. And it is like, what does the Ketramos Cosmogoyf version look like? I have not tried to build that deck, but that's way better than whatever the Zoo version was that I played. Abe, you had something to say?
I'll save it. I don't think it's that. We can...
Hey, you know what? I'm glad I learned the lesson. So you can join the conversation if you want to tell me how dumb I am for just trying this deck. You can do that on the Patreon Discord. Go to patreon.com/ccmtg to join Patreon for $5 or more. You can also join the public Discord or just jump in the YouTube comments. Let us know. You can also follow us on Twitter at ccmtg as well as everywhere else at ccmtgpod. You can also like, subscribe, and follow. Everything that you do there helps out the show a ton. But if you want to find Mason for coaching, you can do that at...
You can reach out to me on Twitter at Mason E. Clark. You can reach out to me on my email, masonclark@gmail.com. If you want to see anything else, you go to twitch.tv/TheMasonClark. If someone wants to find you, where can they go?
You can find me over at Blue Sky at More Nothings. You can also find me at Twitter at More Nothings. And if you're interested in coaching, you can send me a DM on either platform or send me an email to morenothings@gmail.com and just put coaching in the description.
Yeah, you can find me at HeezyGame on Twitter. You can find me at Spencer13H everywhere else. If you want coaching shoot me an email at spencerhowland@gmail.com. Just leave coaching in the description. Thank you, everybody, for listening this week. It was a fun episode, and we'll see y'all next week with a brand new episode of Please Strike It.